Is your phone on? No, it's not.
Mike Conley thrives in his return to Utah as the Jazz offense does not thrive against the Wolves' number one defense. We're talking about it next on POSTCAST.
You are Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
David Locke, along with Ron Boone, as the Utah Jazz fall to the Minnesota Timberwolves 119-100 tonight. Mike Conley's return, and Mike Conley hit the dagger shots in the third quarter that busted this one open for the Minnesota Timberwolves. It was a very close game, tied at the end of one, 19-19. Then tied at the half, and then Mike Conley gets hot late in the third, leading the Timberwolves to a 10-point advantage in the fourth. The game never got close in the fourth quarter. And the reoccurring theme of the night, really, Ron, was the Jazz offense and the struggles. I thought they made some adjustments in the second half that were worthwhile, but let's go back to the first half. Minnesota is one of the two teams in the NBA that denies the rim in top 10 and also denies threes. There's only Milwaukee and Minnesota are the only teams. The reason Minnesota does this is because they have Rudy Gobert. Well, they didn't have Rudy Gobert tonight, and yet the Jazz kept driving to the basket. They'd run into a second or third defender, which by definition means somebody's got to be open somewhere, and they wouldn't pass it, and they would throw up little floaters in the lane. Now, fortunately for the Jazz, they actually made a large amount of those. The Jazz shoot paint non-restricted shots at 43%. That's why it's a bad shot. They're right at league average. That's 0.86 points per possession. The league average, Jazz offense is like league average. It's about 116. So 1.16 points per possession. If you're taking a floater, you're averaging 0.86. That's really bad comparative to your regular possession. That's what Minnesota wants you to do. The Jazz just kept doing it and doing it and doing it. They took 18 of them in the first half. They took another 7 in the third quarter. They got a little bit better as the night went on. So let's go to that. That's where I want to start tonight because shorthanded, all that, I got it. I don't necessarily know that you're supposed to win this game, but that is a defense getting you to do exactly what it wants to make you do and you not adapting to it.
No, and that's the problem that you have when a team forces you to play the way they want you to play, and you just flat out don't get the job done. They were not going to change their defense as long as what the Jazz were doing, trying to score, especially in that first quarter. That was pretty bad. I think the Jazz just didn't have enough ball movement, body movement, that type of thing, to make sure that their defense, the Minnesota Timberwolves defense, is shifting. They're moving. They're running off picks or something like that, and to the point where they could force the Minnesota Timberwolves to change their defense.
Jazz went 1 of 8 from 3 in the first quarter, 3 of 14 in the first half, and then 5 of 21 in the first 3 quarters. So that obviously makes it more difficult if you're not making your threes when you do kick out in these circumstances. And Sensabaugh, Hendricks, and Keontae all starting tonight, and none of them shooting it well. Hendricks and Sensabaugh really are not shooting threes at an NBA level right now. Sensabaugh was 0 of 5. He's now, I don't have it exactly, he's about 12% or 11%.
Well, for the start of the ball game, off 3 for 18. It's 3 of his last 18. 3 of
his last 23. That's about 13%. And then Hendricks tonight hit one late, so he's 2 of 7, but he was 1 of 6. Obviously 1 of 6 prior to that. He's been at 32% since moving into the starting lineup. So obviously that's part of the problem, is that teams are sagging off these guys they don't respect as shooters. And there is this whole thing in this league. They're like Bryce Sensabaugh and Taylor Hendricks can be left wide open for threes until they prove they can make them.
Yeah, and if you're a smart coach, and I'm sure that Coach Finch is definitely that, you're forcing the hand. You're forcing these guys to beat you, and it just doesn't happen. The Jazz are going to continue to run with these guys, though. I mean, to get them as much experience as possible, and the defense that they're playing, hopefully they get better. I put it that way.
The one thing that I do think they got better is in the second half, they started to get Kessler and Erkshaven behind the defense, which is led at least maybe part of the guards' problems was the bigs weren't in the right spot. I'm not necessarily – there's a lot to it. Like, the Jazz weren't passing. That's a fact. Why? We'll have to go back and rewatch the game, talk to Will Hardy tomorrow, and find out when the ball gets into the paint, was it because the big was in the wrong spot, and so therefore they couldn't go anywhere? Was it because the guys didn't space correctly to where they're supposed to go to be able to create passing lanes in the right spots? I don't know those answers. If you saw it, you have those answers, but it's hard to see that in real time. They did a better job, though, the bigs getting behind the defense in the second.
Yeah, so you can tell that they have time watching a little bit of film and pointing out situations out there on the floor helped because, Omir ended up getting behind the defender, so did Walter Kessler. But yet still, you still have to make shots. And we're just not a very good shooting team right now, especially with the lineup they started the ball game off with here tonight.
The Jazz defensively were really good to open the night. They had 79 offense defense, 83 off defense rating in the first half. They had about 100 and through the three quarters, they had about 106. And then it did seem as though either just the lack of offense, lack of focus, mental fatigue from playing the night before, whatever it might have been. I mean, there is a fatigue factor here that is worth mentioning in this. These guys are either all, like, when you're guarding Anthony Edwards, you're outmanned. When you're guarding DeAndre Hunter, you're outmanned. Those are physically grown men. You're given a lot right now to get through a night. Like Johnny Juzang, Micah Potter, even Keontae. Keontae got tired last night. Will Hardy talked about that pregame. That he's the big thing in the offseason is him back to the Steph Curry game. Like, oh, that's the level of conditioning I have to have in this league.
Yeah, I kind of disagree with you in the ball game, but I'm agreeing with you now, considering the amount of minutes that guys play, those very high level minutes. And then the workouts they have here before the ball game, that type of thing. So the legs could be tired. And when the legs are tired, your jump shot's not going to fall that much. And you can see Taylor Hendricks, I'm worried and I'm not worried. I just need a little bit more time, I think, to evaluate his shooting, not so much his game, because I think he has the ability to be a very good player in this league, but just to evaluate his shooting.
And what are you looking for in his shooting?
His shooting it seems to be flat. And from my experience, flat shooters like that, I mean, that shot has to be perfect to go in.
Yeah.
I mean, and so I would like to see his follow through just be a little bit higher. A lot of times guys say, well, he needs a little more arch on his shot. Okay, so they try to shoot it higher, instead of letting the follow through make the ball higher and softer.
So I have a big smile on my face right now because I believe what I see, and we watched him grow up, so this is really cool, is Rudy Gobert's down talking to a bunch of people, and on his right side is his pregnant girlfriend, as Rudy is going to be a father here in the near future. And awfully cool to kind of just see we watched Rudy come here as a young man, and now he's on another team. We obviously love Rudy and wish he was still with us, but as he walks out of the arena in Salt Lake City with someone, on his arm and going to be the mother of his child, and just kind of a cool full moment right there to see Rudy at that stage as he drapes his left arm over her shoulder. She's
not very tall.
She obviously looks very short next to Rudy. I have no idea if she's tall or not, but just kind of a cool moment to see there. Thought we'd share that with you for those of you all hopefully have a lot of love left for Rudy, who did not play tonight in this one. It's interesting that offense was such a struggle tonight, because the one thing that Will Hardy's kind of mastered with his team is how to get them up offensively. They're 10th in the league offensively over the last 10 games, and which is kind of incredible. So that's basically since the trade deadline. He's still got them playing really well offensively. They've been really poor defensively, but they were actually okay for most of the night. They allowed 71 points in the second half, so you don't want to give them a total pass. But it's interesting that offense was such a struggle tonight, because they have gotten a bit, Will just usually generally finds a way to get them going offensively.
So what the lineup that they had out there on the floor, and it's probably, you would think, yes, they're going to struggle. Dunn is not so much of an offensive player.
Yep.
And Kessler, no. Hendricks, Taylor is struggling. And as you mentioned, Sensabaugh, for the most part, is not shooting the basketball very well there. So they got three rookies out there on the floor, and then you got one guy in George who probably has more experience at this level than any of those other guys. So they're just going to struggle.
Yeah, no, that's not a very good offense.
Right.
They're trying to use it to get Keontae the ball playing off ball a little bit. They're trying to give Keontae that experience tonight. we'll see. We'll talk to Will a little bit this week and find out why and what his thought.
And
on that is.
during the coach's interview before the ball game, he did talk about the scrimmage that they have.
Yeah.
You know, so they are scrimmaging, trying to get those guys in position. It's nothing better than going through what you need to do out there on the floor and when you're not trying to simulate an offense or defense, and you're actually going through it where you can, make those adjustments.
All right, you got to star this one up, Ron Boone. You're going to have to get creative on this.
Well, I think I have.
I want to see what you do with your second one, because I have your second one. I want to see if you do it.
No, I got O'Meara in my first one.
Oh.
Yeah.
I was giving a second star that was a little unique tonight.
Okay.
Jason Preston had 5 assists in 12 minutes and 46 seconds.
Yeah. Not surprised either.
So I was going to give him a star for that.
You can give him a star.
Because it didn't seem as though Will Hardy in his post-game press conference was very happy about ball movement or individual play.
Yeah.
And so I'm just kind of scared to go give someone a star that might have been somebody he thought was doing that.
Well, we're going to struggle with this, I think. So I got O'Meara, and I really like the way he played tonight. He really plays hard. He seems to be trying to be ready when he's out there on the floor. In the 5 rebounds in 17 minutes and 40 seconds, 14 points, and 3 block shots. So I think that was
all right.
Steady.
Jason Preston and Omer Yurtseven are your stars.
I like Preston now.
There's a sentence you never thought you'd hear this season. Jazz lose tonight, 119-100. Big win for Minnesota as they try to get back up to number 1. And we'll come back to Monday with the Jazz and the Wolves again. Tickets are available at UtahJazz.com. Hopefully Rudy makes the court. If not, then the Jazz will have to try to battle and do a better job offensively against Minnesota. Again, the number 1 defense in the NBA. We now send you the first ever 24/7 national streaming channel, Locked On Sports Today. It's also on Amazon Fire TV.